We're back at it here at the Luxoft podcast series. This is Pat Corcoran, your host, joining you from a beautiful day in April 2016. We're kicking off the new year with a very interesting and growing topic, which everybody knows just as well as DevOps. I'm joined by two of my astute colleagues who have both been involved in the strategic and tactical elements of what Luxoft is doing in DevOps. First I have with me is Chris Sterling, Director of DevOps and Luxoft's Cloud Practice. He's also the author of a best-selling book, Managing Software Debt, Building for Inevitable Change. Chris is a newcomer to Luxoft, but has been thrown right into the mix as we have continued to track down the path of DevOps, Agile, change, etc. I also have with me one of my colleagues based in Kiev. And by the way, Chris is based in Seattle in case anyone's in search of an autograph for his book. I have with me Stan Kelberg. He's a senior DevOps engineer based in Kiev, which is a critical part of Luxoft's global delivery model. He's been with Luxoft for a little over 2.5 years and has worked on several projects thus far. He's also involved in a lot of training activities internally around DevOps, and he's developed and conducts the opening course DevOps Basics. It's a particularly important part of Luxoft's development internally of our staff around this hot topic. And he's been involved in DevOps, both of these gentlemen, for quite some time. So I'm excited to be joined by Chris and Stas. And here we are looking at a topic, guys, that's really been hot in the analyst world, in the vendor world, in the buyer world. You know, it's made some headlines from everywhere, from CIO magazine to your most niche publications around Agile and DevOps. You know, talk to me how you guys have grown professionally. And, we'll start with you, Chris, in terms of how has DevOps changed and evolved through your career working in information technology?
Yeah, so I started off quite a while ago working in an organization where we did our first Scrum project quite a while back. So down in the use of Agile as a technique, we were also using stream programming practices. Now, it was interesting at the time, we had to do a lot of our own automated deployments and build an infrastructure management. Come a few years later, after doing a few projects like this and using Scrum and actually becoming a certified Scrum trainer and helping a lot of other organizations do this as well, started to find out how uncommon it was for developers and operations folks to work together and for there to be a lot of automation between the two and even a lot of collaboration. So when the DevOps movement really got going, probably around 2011, 2012, definitely started to see a change in pace and a change in behavior in some of the organizations I was talking to. They started to talk about continuous delivery and how their operations group would work very closely with their development group. And I tried to help provide some ways that they could do that effectively, including, organizational patterns of how they align themselves, and also work with them on actual continuous delivery pipelining. Now, my last company I worked at was CenturyLink Cloud, and over there I got to work with some great folks like Jared Ray, Richard Seroter, and Jim Newkirk, who really had taken this to practice across their entire organization. We went from 5 to 35 teams and had linear scalability in terms of delivery velocity, and I thought that was just amazing. And so for me, seeing this happen at multiple companies, but also just how solid we did it at CenturyLink Cloud, I was very happy to come here at Luxoft, hear about some of the things that Luxoft was doing, and also figure out how we can help our clients do the same thing.
Great. Sounds interesting. Indeed, a long path working with some of the thought leaders around DevOps, which is certainly great to, have anyone experience professionally. Now, how about you, Stas? Can you talk to me about your experience and how DevOps has evolved around your growth professionally?
Yeah, sure. Sure. Um, so basically, I come from sysadmin experience, and at first I was kind of introduced to DevOps around like 5 years ago, maybe a bit more, and it was around 2010, I guess. At that time, almost nobody knew what it was, and I basically came across some folks that were doing a lot of stuff already in DevOps manner with a good collaboration of operations and developers. And it kind of opened my eyes. Even so, I mean, lots of their tools were quite custom at that point. Puppet was only, starting to grow. I already, seen like a massive change, and yeah, I mean, this is the future. I understood it. And from that point, I was kind of moving towards it like all the time and improving in that direction. And it really, really changed my life. And, I was, from my work, I was always had this like weird feeling, like, there's something wrong in the process. We, repeat a lot of, stuff, over and over again. And, communication was, broken as well. To do some simple things, I mean, you would have to, do a lot of, like, paperwork, change management and stuff, which is, I mean, not bad. I mean, change management is needed, of course, but when there is an excess of it, you kind of feel it's wrong. So basically, DevOps was kind of, a bit of a fresh air, and from that point, I'm 100% sure this is direction to go to.
Great. Good to hear. So, guys, just to take one step back, I think we need to put a little more context around this. So I'm going to use my grammatic dictionary and let our audience know that DevOps is, in fact, a clipped compound that stands for development operations. And, from the way I examine and look at DevOps, it's really understanding it as sort of a movement, if you will, or a new school of thought, something like that, whereby both the developers, the IT professionals, the testers, the builders, the releasers, the production, the proxy, there's a lot more harmony, if that might be the right word, between the teams than ever before. And that's why, given its relationship to Agile and something else like continuous delivery, it seems to be, like you said, Stas, a breath of fresh air. Can you guys talk to me a little bit about, what's actually happening in the enterprise that has adopted a DevOps movement, and what are the benefits that are driving the growth of this quite interesting and effective movement? So, Chris, do you want to take that one first?
Yeah, sure. I think there's a couple of things. From a development standpoint, we hear about things like software is eating the world and such. And you are seeing that quite a bit. I'm just talking to a hardware company recently, and they are trying to figure out how to change from a very hardware-driven company to a software-driven company that drives how they do their hardware. And that's because they are finding that in order to compete in their market, they're having a hard time doing that from the current procurement and long cycle process of design that they currently are using. We're trying to help them go to more of an innovation lab approach where they're iterating very quickly on small ideas that lead to bigger solutions that actually solve their customers' problems. Now, that actually is kind of driving a whole new change in mindset. It's around time to market. You're starting to see operations groups being pressured in the same way that hardware companies or many companies are, or legacy companies maybe. They're getting pressured to move fast. And in order to do that, they probably need to get aligned with a lot of the techniques that the software development organization is using, such as agile techniques. And that's where things like Chef, which came out quite a few years ago, Chef is an infrastructure automation tool. It allowed folks that were focusing on configuration management infrastructure to actually create and test their configurations before they went out into a particular environment. And not only that, be able to recreate it in a consistent manner. And that also in an automated way made it much faster. And now all of a sudden they could keep up with teams, or even better yet, join the Agile team and be a part of their everyday design and development, becoming a part of the process that's actually moving fast. So I think that pressure of moving faster, software becoming something that's really driving enterprises and organizations, those things are actually causing us to apply these DevOps approaches in a much more extensive manner across our industry.
Stas, do you want to run with that a little bit more in terms of some of the driving factors that are leading enterprises to really adopt DevOps? I mean, what have you seen from your role, sort of in the engineering and the delivery side?
Yeah, sure. So from the engineering side, I guess there are two key main drivers. There are for sure more, but I would say there are two keys. So first one is automation, which I think is the heart of DevOps movement technologically. And the second one is metric collection and visibility of the platform. So, and basically, when enterprise look at the benefits of these tools, so with lots of automation, you have much faster delivery. And with a lower failure rate because of minimized chance of human error and good testability in test environments, which are, exactly the same as production, and thankfully to the configuration management tools like Chef or Puppet, etc. As a result, the overall platforms become more stable and predictable. It is, again, with automation, much easier to scale up and down. And if it's all backed up by configuration management, it becomes much, much easier and reproducible. People always say that you also have cost reduction when platform becomes more dynamic, and is usually reached by flexible use of resources. But apart from that, what corporations really benefit from, if the platform is more stable, apart from not just using the excessive resources, you also just simply have less downtime. And it does cost to big corporations have downtime. Also, if you get to that movement, it's a very, very big time saver for people, for everybody, like developers, operations, QAs, etc., even managers. And which is also a big saver for corporations. And this is where a lot of people turn into the DevOps movement quite quickly. And this saves time can be used to improve the process and the platform further. Basically, this makes everybody happier: developers, operations, QAs, managers, and in the end, the customers of those corporations as well, because everybody can see if the service became more stable, if they can release new features, stuff like that.
So clearly there's some beneficial drivers here, both on the enterprise side, for adopting it, but really also on the vendor side for it being an offering that you can bring as a value add or a direct driver for a lot of the delivery in the ADM world. Can you guys talk to me about what you're seeing in the actual vendor landscape, right? Because DevOps to me, IoT, cloud, all these buzzwords that have come out over the last several years, obviously every vendor wants to stick their name and attach it right to some of these areas. So obviously we're seeing a lot of, we do DevOps, quote unquote. Talk to me a little bit about the particular role that an SI or a service provider, like Luxoft, can really play in this, and has played, in fact, in this DevOps world. And it's not just a marketing initiative. What are you seeing on the macro picture from vendors, and where's the value add that a service provider that has certain strengths that we do can play in this area? Chris, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, sure. I think one of the things I've been talking to a lot of customers lately, even before I came to Luxoft, as I was director of product for CenturyLink Cloud, I got to talk to them about, well, what are some of the things that are common challenges for them when trying to go to cloud or go into more modern engineering practices. And many of them refer to things like continuous delivery. They wanted to actually outfit their development process in a way that is very automated, had automated promotion to different environments, and they wanted to also have a way to manage production in a more effective manner. And so I guess one of the things that we're finding here is that customers continue to ask about how can we get to continuous delivery as a way of producing software more quickly, along with in a more quality-oriented manner. How can we reduce the number of defects in production? So what we tend to do is we have multiple clients that we've done this with, we'll actually go in and help them transform their build and test and deployment pipelines along with their monitoring hooks in order to do a more continuous delivery-oriented pipelining of their software. And a lot of times this allows them to continue on feature delivery along with now replatforming underneath to make sure that they can get faster changes to production in order to satisfy the customers more effectively. So that's one of the areas that we do. And then another area that we've also been helping them with is that deployment automation and environment automation. And we call that infrastructure automation services. These are where we start to use tools like Chef, Ansible, and Puppet to support their needs in terms of making configurations that are repeatable, being able to deploy those configurations into different environments, whether it be storage, compute, and network, along with any software deployments that need to go onto those, any workloads that need to be deployed into those environments. So I guess those are kind of the major ways that we have been engaging with customers and supporting their efforts around DevOps delivery.
Very interesting indeed. Stas, anything from your side to add around, the value add that comes from a Luxoft, given your experience on some of the projects we've done?
Yeah, I absolutely agree with Chris. And the main benefit that we can bring to the customers is, first of all, automating their pipeline of delivery and continuous integration, continuous delivery process. From what I worked on in Luxoft, we had both large corporations where we did a replatforming to a better automated infrastructure, as Chris said, as well as greenfield projects like small startups that, we kind of understand that we need to go into the DevOps direction, and, we just need someone like Luxoft, make it happen. So we do it right, like from the very beginning. That's quite different cases, and you approach them differently. But yeah, those kind of services, I guess, drive the customer interest in Luxoft services in DevOps area.
Are you guys seeing any debates happening, within the DevOps community itself about process, procedure? Because when, there's a lot of discussion, as I'm sure you guys know, around what agile really means and how do you interpret if it's an agile project or not. Can you talk a little bit about, if there is in existence, some of the philosophical debate between, the DevOps and some DevOps?
Yes, now it's interesting because I definitely, this is Chris, I have a theory around this, and I'm fairly in alignment with a few other folks in the industry, such as Martin Fowler and Gene Kim and others. There's really two parts to actually DevOps, in my opinion. Now, as far as what the debate is, we can go into that after, thinking about what are the two parts. To me, there's one which is the DevOps culture. In fact, this might be the more important aspect of applying DevOps in practice. And what's interesting is if you really think about what DevOps is trying to drive, it was the same thing that Agile tried to drive when it came out. They had these separate QA folks. They had separate product folks. They had separate architects and separate team members of all kinds. And really what Agile was about is bringing those folks together to deliver together in a much more effective manner and quicker, faster cycles, and satisfying the customer and focus on the customer. Now, what was interesting is that led to an operations group sometimes. I remember going to companies and they would be doing Scrum on all the software development teams, but then the software development teams were complaining about this operations group because in order for them to get their software deployed in production, this operations group had to bring it through their different processes and then get it in production. Sometimes it would take months after they already had implemented the software effectively. And so there was this definite clash of culture. And you think about what that clash is. You have the developers who want to get things fast into production, and you have the operations group who want to keep the production environment stable, right? Don't let my pager go off. Now, what we do in DevOps culture is bring those folks together and have shared responsibility. Rather than having conflicting ideals, we want to figure out how can they work together and have the same goals as a team. And so in order to do that, you got to break down the silos. A lot of organizations I've worked in that are doing DevOps effectively, they are actually on the same team now. There is no development organization and ops organization anymore. They are working together, and they figure out how to use platforms and shared responsibility in order to make the automation and the quality built in and allow their autonomous teams to work in an effective manner as a group. And there was a major focus from a culture point of view on the customer. And then there's some technical values you have to have in order to support that, and those are really self-service. Everything needs to be self-service. How can we make it so you can provision, any kind of environments that you need, networking, storage, whatever it might be, automatically? And then have everything automated. That's a continuous delivery. Automate everything you can in order to make sure that you can repeat the processes over and over again. And then along with that, how do I collaborate? Well, I collaborate in a programmable manner, that through APIs and through different ways of exposing that self-service and abilities to my other dependent teams. So I think those are the real technical values that drive it as well. So you need that culture and technical values coming together.
Stas, I'd be curious to hear your perspective on along the similar lines of what Chris described in terms of, some of the fault lines, if you will, that exist within DevOps. But can you reflect on it a little bit more around, are there any geographical differences between European DevOps and North American DevOps, Asia Pacific, or even between some of the verticals that one might want to work in? Are there verticals that are more mature, less mature? How do you see, his line of thinking sort of apply to those areas as well?
All right. So first of all, I guess a bit of general message is that, yes, DevOps is still a bit controversial in some areas, and there is, quite a lot of conversation still going on. Basically, because it's a relatively new movement. I'm not really sure in terms of difference geographically. I guess it's just, spreading across. Maybe in some places a bit faster than others. But, I guess it's getting there. I guess there are some, just non-geographic debates going on. For example, a classic one is, and it's been going on forever, whether you should call DevOps a person, should there be a title like DevOps engineer? In theory, there definitely should not. I mean, it all started like a movement, and it's a big danger calling a person DevOps because it could just become another silo, as Chris, pointed out. I mean, it would say, okay, I'm just doing DevOps, create a ticket for me, and, it doesn't look like a self-service anymore. But from another, practical point of view, especially, coming from recruitment point of view, I mean, you need to name, those people somehow. And usually, okay, we need, these guys, but they should do everything in DevOps way. They should know what it is and blah, blah, blah. And why just not put DevOps in a job title? And if you look at site statistics Indeed.com, and you just put the word DevOps, you can see that even so DevOps engineer shouldn't be, there, it is there. I mean, whether people want it or not, it is de facto a job title as well. But not just, I mean, it's just a small part of everything else. So first of all, as Chris said, it's a cultural movement, and then it's basically a number of principles that people follow, and those principles then go based on some more, practical ideas like, DevOps practices like configuration management, version control, automation, monitoring, visibility, and stuff like that. But yeah, I generally agree. It's still a controversial topic, and if I probably go through all the controversial areas of DevOps, it's probably going to take forever. So I'll probably end it here.
I do want to add on to that, though. I do want to add on to that a little bit. I think when I guide folks, mostly when I'm talking to management who is looking, how do we apply DevOps in our organization? I'll talk to them about, well, maybe what you need is DevOps enablement, because in order to get to self-service, programmable, and automated technical capabilities, you actually have to re-platform a bit. And sometimes you just can't do that without a team focused on helping make that happen. And so I've seen it multiple times now where teams I've worked with, they've actually had a group who got together and started the process of re-platforming and enabling other teams to actually start down this movement. And their whole job is to figure out how to work themselves out of a job, at least that specific job. And so that is a way to get there. And if you are starting from a place of not having a lot of this automation, not having programmable APIs, not having continuous delivery, you do have to do some upfront work. And so having that team maybe supportive, and I call them DevOps enablement, they actually are getting to the point where they support these teams and help them get there.
Interesting indeed, gentlemen. So we've covered a lot today, I think, in a short period of time, and I think on a topic that could really go on forever, depending on what angle you took to discuss it. But I think, at the end of the day, what we've really discussed here is a new methodology that I think is quite hot. It's more than just a buzzword. It's certainly being implemented as we have done it ourselves as an organization. But ultimately, it's a methodology that has created a lot of scholarship, that's created a lot of debate, that's certainly global in the sense of its adoption and execution. There will always be some sort of fault lines between this type of work. I think that's pretty common as methodologies grow and mature. Certainly different industries latch on to them faster than others. And, ultimately this dialogue is going to continue, in the global DevOps discussion. I guess I would ask that both of you here, when we sort of on an ending note, what is it that you're looking for out of DevOps in the future, and how do you see yourself sort of being a part of it?
Yeah, I guess this is Chris. What's interesting to me is what DevOps is actually leading us to. When you start automating all of your build pipelines and your deployment pipelines along with monitoring, and you start to re-platform, and then there's another aspect that starts to come into play, the onslaught of cloud. Cloud is actually enabling a lot of services and the platform itself to become much more malleable and easier to work with, and it enables DevOps culture as well. With cloud and the cloud native movement, I think for me, I'm starting to see a huge shift over the next few years in terms of how software and applications get to production. I think that we're going to have much smaller microservices. We're going to see a much more consistent platform to enable these services to be ran in different environments, even across clouds and even into private data centers. I think that this is going to be an interesting number of years that might change our industry. Again, DevOps is an instigator along with Agile, but I think that there's a next step, which is that cloud native movement. I'm very interested in where that's going to be going.
Stas, anything from your side?
Yeah, I think the next couple of years will be huge for DevOps, like guaranteed. As Chris said, the cloud movement has been huge, and I think it will still be going. And there are other factors that come into play right now. So, like a lot of interesting technology like containers and Docker that just like jumped like out of nowhere, and the adoption rate is crazy, and it's actually changing the way how people do automation and continuous delivery right now. And I'm really, really interested to see how this all will play out. And apart from that, there are other interesting hot technologies coming into DevOps world. Since it's quite a hot topic right now, and people just go there, experiment, and I guess apart from technologies, also they get experience in the movement, and it's getting there. I guess it's gonna be on its rails at some point, and maybe then we will have less controversy around this. But yeah, I'm very excited. I'm very excited to see where it goes.
Great. Well, thank you, guys. This has certainly been a neat and interesting discussion around a hot topic. So I guess one of the good things is for our listeners out there, this is only one in a series of DevOps discussions that Chris and Stas and myself are going to have. And what we really want to do is in our next series is give our listeners an indication as to, what does the work really look like? What's that developer and engineering perspective on the type of change that is being enacted in certain enterprises that we have been a part of, but also, what the end users have been a part of. So I think this was an excellent starting point, gentlemen, in terms of, what is DevOps, answering that fine question in many different ways. I look forward to our second discussion, which will be a targeted one around a particular case study. So we hope that our listeners come back and they're excited to learn more about the type of work from the delivery and the build perspective of the impact DevOps is really having. For now, this is Pat Corcoran from Luxoft.